You know, I see this. I mean, you hear about the unfortunate, it's beyond unfortunate, what happened to that young man being blackmailed, taking his own life because of the embarrassment. So I understand the demand. Let's do something. Let's get social media out of the hands, because it can be very poisonous. What are the long-term implications for Australian families, both positively and the fact that this could really have a huge change in society there?
Yeah, I mean, we've been basically running this experiment for 20 years now, and there's a great book written by a New York NYU professor called The Anxious Generation. And in The Anxious Generation, I mean, there's a very, very direct link between exposure to social media, usage of smartphones, and mental health decline of minors. So this isn't mysterious whatsoever. I mean, I think that link has been established. We see it in the scientific literature. I think the main question about what's going on in Australia, though, is like, is this the correct way to address this problem? But whether or not there's a problem, clearly there is. How the particulars of this implementation policy and whether it will reduce this specific problem or even the problem of this one tragic incident that you're sort of highlighting is unclear, because there are other ways in which minors are exposed to other folks, and so whether this is the right tool is up for debate, but whether this is a problem is not. I think social media is quite toxic for minors. That's quite clear.
What about the pushback that will come and is coming from Meta, TikTok, YouTube? How are they adjusting their systems to comply with this? And how could this regulatory approach reshape how global tech companies design age verification, privacy features, safety tools, and on? Because, look, this has hit a nerve. Already a number of other entities globally are looking into this.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think the tech companies have always been under pressure, especially when it comes to minors. I mean, we already have privacy laws in the United States. We have privacy laws in Europe, especially around minors. I think they have also sort of seen the writing on the wall. I mean, I know Meta has come out with an Instagram for teens where they have even more protection. So clearly, all the tech companies know this is coming. Again, the Jonathan Haidt book, I think, had such a huge impact, and a lot of folks knew this kind of thing was coming. Now, whether how policymakers themselves decide to deal with this problem, again, I think it will come down to the individual countries. I think some countries, like Europe, I think are more comfortable with the government taking a much more active role. I think in the United States, we have, First Amendment protections where that sort of thing is more sensitive. So how these different entities react, I think it's just going to be a country by country thing.
Do you think that social media is actually going to change in Australia, other areas, to kind of comply with what Australia is demanding? And look, kids are kids. They're going to find ways around this.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things. I mean, I think regulation or not, the younger generation, I mean, their usage patterns of social media is changing. They're moving more towards social gaming platforms and other forms of social media. And how these policymakers react to that, I think, is one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but I think it's just the trends are all going in a different direction either way. So I'm not really quite sure if this will be the death knell for social media. I think they're all also moving towards content platforms and less towards these social communication platforms that we are used to. So all those trends are happening. I do think, though, that this is a warning shot that, social media companies cannot just be unaccountable. They have to follow certain regulatory regimes, and they have a responsibility to their users, especially when they're minors.
Yeah, so how are policymakers going to balance child safety with individual privacy rights on the digital platform?
Well, the reality is and this is just a reality of any sort of any sort of online platform, which is, I mean, data security is a really tricky problem. So I think there should just be the assumption that at any point, any of your data is always exposed. And so I think the right response to that is to place the onus on these technology platforms to say, hey, listen, whether it's minor data, like data generated by minors, should have additional protections, but almost all user data should have a lot of protections. And if you don't protect that data, there should be onerous fines or punishments.
Yeah. Real quick,
But I do, go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry, we only have about 30 seconds. Do you think all this should fall on the companies, or to what degree do parents have to weigh in on this and know what their kids are doing?
I think, listen, I do think this is going to be a debate for countries. I think some countries, culturally, the parents should make that decision.
Yeah.
The only reason I would caution against it is I think the parents need to have to make informed decisions. It's very hard to know what's in these algorithms. It's very hard to know the incentives of these social media platforms. So I'd say as long as they're informed, I think it should be a parent's